President Trump has just announced a sweeping, huge trade deal with the European Union. Now, a lot of details there, but the basics are European imports, including automobiles, will be tariffed at 15%. And steel and aluminum from the European Union will still be tariffed at 50%. So a pretty big deal. And quite frankly, the Europeans were happy to make the deal. They were happy to cement it in place. They know the U.S. is on track to making a lot of deals. And they literally said, look, we could either drag this out and then become a problem later on and going on without a deal and paying higher tariffs, or we could just cut to the chase. And that's what they did. So that's really a big deal. It's really an important trade relationship for a lot of reasons. Now, a couple of details are very important. The European Union has already committed to $750 billion in purchases in terms of U.S. energy products, mainly gas and oil. So that's really, really important. They're going to get a lot of natural gas from the U.S. We're the number one producer in the world, and they're going to buy it from us, a lot of it. And they've also committed to increasing their direct foreign investment into the U.S. by another $600 billion. So those two things alone they're just fantastic. In addition to the tariff revenue we're getting on all of the European products. So to put this in context, last year, trade between the EU and the US accounted for about 1.9, just under 2 trillion, 1.9 something. And that accounted for roughly 30% of global trade and over 40% of global domestic product. So it was already highly valued, a hugely valuable relationship. But now it's even bigger, and it's more depth. There's more depth. There's more engagement, and so the world's largest bilateral trading relationship has just been supersized, right? Well, what does this mean going forward for the U.S. and the world? Well, quite a number of things are evident here. Number one, more trade and investment between the U.S. and the EU, by definition, means less trade with other partners, particularly China and Russia. As I mentioned earlier, the $750 billion energy deal, a lot of that's going to be natural gas. I don't know what the proportion is, but Europe has been dependent on Russian natural gas for years, and they want to get away from that, and that's a huge deal because now they won't be as dependent. Maybe not at this very moment, but going forward, it'll move from the theoretical to the practical, and the Europeans will be less dependent on Russia for their energy costs, which is a great thing. What's more, that hurts Russia. Russia's going to be losing a ton of revenue when they lose the European market, or when they get diminished. They have less of it. I don't know what the actual ratio will be, as I say, but they're going to get paid less, and that's a good thing. At the same time, China will know that as China's purchasing a lot of Russian energy, but they're doing it on a cut rate deal, and they may do it at even less, knowing that Russia needs their revenue. So it's a great deal for the Europeans, and it's a tough deal for Russia, and it's a great deal for the U.S. So there's leverage here. We're not only keeping the European facing westward and minimizing their eastward strategic needs, but we're also isolating Russia economically. And so all while being at the same time huge investment into the U.S. economy. So we're building our manufacturing base with this deal with other people's money, just as we did with other people's money with the UAE investment. I think it was over $1 trillion. That was a week or two ago. So Trump is using other people's money to build back America, and that's smart. And I got to say something else here. I think this really is a inflection point on U.S. foreign policy, or how the U.S. comports itself around the world. There have been articles written about how the U.S. is devaluing soft power in terms of, in the Cold War, the soft power of the U.S. meant allies could free ride, not spend nearly as much on defense that they agreed to do, and get the military coverage and protection anyway, and get great access to the U.S. market, undercutting American producers and American manufacturing. That went on for decades. Trump's saying no more, and he's right. And he's right because you know what? We already have soft power. We have enough soft power, more than we'll ever need, I think, at this point. And what I mean by that is simply look, the Cold War is over. You got Russia, you got China. Um, Nobody is hankering to do more business with China. The rest of the world, especially Europe and the US, are trying to decouple from China. Companies want to leave China. Direct foreign investment is cratering. Capital is fleeing China. So nobody wants to do business with China. Nobody wants to do business with Russia, really, to any great extent. You don't want to be reliant on either of them because they lie, they cheat, they steal IP. I mean, China, I wrote a piece earlier how China's just legalized theft for any company and any firm and individual operating in China who it thinks it can get it out of, and it's happening. So we don't need to worry about soft power. America is the best story in the world in terms of business. America is business friendly. Trump is making sure of that. We're lowering taxes, lowering regulation, and we have the domestic demand, the domestic economy, the consumer economy to justify it. So this is all very smart. And Trump is using rather soft power. We have enough of that. He's using other people's money to preserve our hard power, to preserve our economy, our trade, our manufacturing base, our innovation, and our military dominance around the world. And that is a huge shift that is now becoming really crystal clear. And I just don't think that Russia or China were ready for the art of this deal.